Generation to Generation began by asking, what might future generations desire from us in relation to our innovations and inventions? Humans and technologies have always evolved together. So when it comes to artificial intelligence, the latest of our great technologies, we wanted to know, how else might we evolve? What might we inherit? How could we transform and change along with our technologies from generation to generation?
I think the assumption, or sort of the prevailing notion, is that poetry and technology are at odds with one another, right? Because we sort of presume that poetry is sort of the most human art. And, technology we often regard as being soulless and sterile and mechanical. And I've always sort of wanted to push back and challenge that notion a little bit, because to me, poetry really derives its power from pattern and structure and form and rules and the subversion of rules. So I really think of poetry as being both a form of art in its own right and also a really powerful technology that has allowed us humans to express important things, to preserve precious information, and to transmit wisdom through space and time.
Humans and technology have always coincided in evolution, and language is also a part of that. Our ability to communicate with each other is what makes humans unique, and humans excel. And that's what this show is about, in addition to it being about technology across generations, across time. It's also about how language intertwines these things, and how technology has therefore advanced our communications through things like the internet. What I think was personally unique about this project is how the works and iterations of the works are living in a variety of spaces. They're living in the digital space on chain, but they're also living physically as iterations and sculptures in the museum.
So when we first started developing Generation to Generation, eWasteland was one of the first big installations that we were thinking about as a way to kind of make these technologies confront you more. We wanted to do that with scale. We were partnering with DWM Surplus. We got a lot of broken and old technology from there.
It really has so much to do with so many of the themes at the heart of my collaboration with Nathaniel, really thinking about the palpability and the presence of digital technology, the lineage of our technological innovations, what we are leaving for the future.
So in the end, it came together into this kind of chaotic but also organized wasteland of technology.
The idea behind Feral Font and NFT and this sort of hybrid transhuman font that we have developed together really kind of grew out of a love and an appreciation for the aesthetics of language, and also for the idea that all language, all letters, are sort of a weird hybrid of image and meaning. So the font, I think, is really about playing with that kind of tension and leaning into it. And we're really looking at how a language model can learn to decipher our human language in its own way and begin to sort of rewrite it and recast it as something familiar but also strangely new.
I think the interesting thing with Feral Font is it's the generational aspect of creating this space that feels very childlike and approachable for the next generation to create. And honestly, the current generation, everybody loves the color.
Oral binary is really all about taking this notion that the zeros and ones of code can add up to something transcendent. We're using the zeros and ones of machine speak to really play with the idea of either or, of this or that, of human and machine, of nature and technology. We're kind of setting up these binaries and sort of interrogate them.
And then to take it in the museum space, sound of the piece literally resonates on our eardrums, in our space, on a screen, in a room that feels both futuristic because it's lime green, strange wallpaper, but also feels very homey, where people are sitting and being together.
I think, generation to generation for me is such a great title. And the idea that a word like generation just has so many rich meanings when it comes to not just technology, but when it comes to culture and community.
There's generativity and generative AI and how they move forward and push forward. There's generations of technology and how there's a media feedback loop in many ways.
So we're really kind of looking at this longer spectrum of technology, looking at generations of technology and how each one builds upon the next. The word after us is really, it's an AI-powered epic poem that is all about the fate of language, and really looks at how technology is itself rewriting how we use words. And kind of looking at the ways in which artificial intelligence and large language models are enabling us to do things with words that are different than what we have been able to do up until now, but also kind of celebrating the ways that language has always sort of served us as humans.
They're just out of bounds generative pieces from the software and your poem that we worked together. They're bits and pieces from artist books that we worked on together. They're bits and pieces. We actually made handmade generative, in the analog sense, paper from scraps of drafts of the poems that Sasha had written and printed out. And so in many ways, the word both began our collaboration as a poem and summarizes our collaboration as an installation.
Weighing went through a lot of iterations before it reached its final form that we see in the museum space, but the through thread has always been these metal letters. We created these with the help of Metcovery, which is a metal foundry that uses recycled metals. And we poured these recycled metals into handmade sandcast molds of the N and FT letters.
The different letters all have such history. Like, they're all, one of them's like bullet casings that are melted down. One of them's refurbished metal from a superfund site.
I think my favorite thing about Weighing as a complete installation is this conversation between the machine error of the font itself and the human error with all the little imperfections in the metal letters.
Still Moving is an interactive installation that has an array of iPads on the exhibition. It's also existed as a dance performance. It's existed on-chain. Technology always asks us to move in ways we normally wouldn't. The way that we move our cell phones, the way that we have to gesture to get it to respond. It's not that it adapts to us, it's that we adapt to it. What does it mean to be a human facing a machine? Every movement, small or sweeping, births this poetic, fluid text on screen, and every individual has their own experience each time, each moment, online and with each other in the gallery space. We can think about how technologies are extensions of ourselves, but they also are us. We evolve along with our technologies and they along with us. They are kin, we are kin.
It's set up, I think, the necessity to have more and more nuanced conversations about what these tools are, how they're built, what we can use them for, how we can all sort of come together and work in a positive way to create better versions of them for the next generation.
On an intimate level, this exhibition asks us to look at our direct relationship to technology. How do we use ChatGPT in the day-to-day? What does it mean when we speak to Alexa or Siri? Can we be more creative? Can we amplify potential? Then, on a systemic level, how might we regulate artificial intelligence and other new forms of technologies? And then, on an inspirational level, I'm curious what people might imagine that I haven't thought of yet. Where else might the next generation, my students, my children, bring AI, artificial intelligence, new technologies? How can we both take accountability for and joy and wonder in what comes next?